Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of AmeriTech Talks. I'm Khrystyna, Growth and Partnership Manager at AmeriTech, and I'm excited to have you with us as we dive into more real-world application of AI and how it's shaping the future of technology. In our first two episodes, we explored how AI is revolutionizing software development and the rise of AI agents and robotic automation. But today, we are tackling something even more critical, the real world challenges of AI adoption and, more importantly, how to overcome them. AI has proven its value in automation, software development, and engineering. But when companies try to scale AI to enterprise level, they run into serious obstacles, from data privacy and regulatory concerns to poor code quality, integration issues, and AI struggling with massive code bases. To help us navigate these challenges, we're bringing back Edward Cruz, founder and CEO of Gopher Vertical, head of AI innovation at AmeriTech, and a leader in AI driven development, automation, and enterprise AI scaling. Edward, welcome back.
Thanks, Khrystyna. It's great to be here again.
Today, we're shifting focus not just on what AI can do, but how to make it truly work in production at scale. What do you see as the number one challenge companies face when they try to bring AI into full scale production?
That is the $1 million question right there. So what it really comes down to is that we have to find a way to bring the business world into the AI world and vice versa. There's actually a really big gap there. What we wind up having are, for example, legacy systems that have been developed traditionally, that have been implemented and rolled out traditionally. And on the other hand, you have all these amazing advances that are possible with AI, but somehow you have to bring those two into alignment. So that is the absolute biggest challenge. A really good example of this would be data. Companies will very frequently have legacy data, and that means that if you try to take that legacy data and incorporate it into AI, the AI is going to struggle. It's a bad data in, bad data out kind of situation. You don't want AI to give unreliable answers, so it doesn't matter how well it works or how well it's structured, you have to have good inputs. So that's a classic example.
That's such a powerful point. AI works well in small controlled environments, but when companies try to apply it at an enterprise level, things start breaking down. Why does AI struggle when deployed in large scale software development? And what are the most common mistakes companies make when scaling AI?
Yeah, so that's more of what I was talking about. Basically, when you're in a situation with legacy software, it's just not built for AI. So it's like, how do you take a new engine and fit it into an old rusty car? It's really, really hard to do that. Another issue is that a lot of AI is developed with controlled data and also small data typically. But a lot of companies and projects have huge data. And so how do you align that? How do you get that huge data to work with AI when it's not really been developed that way? Another issue is that you have to figure out how to get the pipeline to flow efficiently. If you have issues with your AI technology, it means that you will not gain the benefit of using AI. So this is a huge concern. Even though you're bringing in great tools and new technology, you have to make it work. And then finally, you have the challenge of people and being able to bring them up to speed on this new world of AI. So that's probably the most important challenge, is that we want to make sure that all of the stakeholders that are involved in developing complex software get the training and support they need to make that possible.
That's such a clear breakdown, thank you. Many companies experiment with AI, but few actually move it into production successfully. Why do so many AI initiatives fail when trying to move beyond proof of concept? What's the best approach to ensure AI is scalable, sustainable, and production ready?
Yeah, so there are a lot of factors that are involved there. One of them is that AI actually has very high processing demands. And so that means that you have to have the right infrastructure to support that. You don't want to be, running a big piece of software on a cheap laptop. You want to make sure you have the right architecture and infrastructure. The other part of it is that a lot of the tools that are being used are generic tools. And that becomes a huge challenge because a lot of enterprise software depends on specific deliverables, specific solutions. And so in order to make sure that you can align that with AI, you really need to customize or tune your AI. It's not going to really work if you just focus on generic AI tools.
Super insightful. I can see how that would impact the entire development process. And with AI systems processing huge amounts of data, security and privacy are becoming major concerns, especially across different global regulations. How should companies think about data privacy when working with AI? And what best practices can help keep AI models compliant and secure?
Yes, there's so many key issues around data security. As I mentioned before, a big part of it is that you have to work very closely with your legacy data. You want to work with it locally, for example, and rather than put it in the cloud, that means you can focus on things like on-prem solutions with your AI. The other thing too is that when you're architecting these solutions, you've got to keep in mind all of the local laws, regulations, and so forth. This is absolutely essential. You have to have this from the very beginning, because if you don't, it'll be very, very difficult to refactor later and to get it to work. Lastly, I think the most important thing is to be open and transparent about what those objectives are and how you're going to deliver them. So that is probably, I think, the most important part. It really means that you have to focus on the solution from the very beginning, and you want to make sure that you're able to achieve all of those outcomes for the data privacy and security of your new AI technology.
Mhm. AI generated code is increasingly popular, but it often comes with significant quality risks, from code inefficiencies to security vulnerabilities, even. What are the biggest risks when using AI for code generation, and how can developers ensure that AI generated code is reliable, secure, and production ready?
Yeah, that's perhaps the most important issue when you're trying to deliver technology using AI, is that the AI is going to do amazing work, but you have to check that work. It may not be perfect or even close to perfect. Want to deliver something that actually functions. Ironically, you're going to, for example, have safety issues that could leave holes for bugs or hackers to come in and to exploit the platform you developed. It could have spaghetti code or really inefficient code that doesn't perform well. That is perhaps one of the biggest risks, because if you have functional code and yet all of the code behind the scenes is of poor quality, that's going to be a risk for you and your project. The other thing that you have to keep in mind is that you have to be very aggressively in the loop and check the work that it's doing. It's not going to do this itself. You have to be absolutely engaged with the work as it's conducted by the AI. And so this means you need to run checks on what it's doing. You need to test it. You need to look it over. And most importantly, you actually have to steer it. This is really a collaboration. So you have to treat AI like a teammate. You're just not going to let it do whatever it wants to do. You have to be an active partner and collaborator with it.
I hope folks here are taking notes because that's pure gold. One issue we're seeing, AI works well with smaller modular projects, but what happens when the code base gets too large for AI to handle efficiently? How does AI's performance degrade when working with massive complex system? And what solutions exist to help AI scale alongside growing code bases?
Yes, yeah, this is another big challenge. In fact, on a project I'm working on right now, I just had this exact problem. One of the AI generated files had grown to over 2 megabytes in size. Now, bear in mind, even just a few months ago, the AI could not even handle files that had, say, more than 500 or 1,000 lines in it. And this is now a really large file. But this was an absolute cap on this. It was too large for the AI to even attempt to work with it. And so that required a major refactoring effort to get it whittled down to size. So this is going to be a constant constraint. The AI can do amazing things, but it cannot handle the enormous context of large, complex systems. It's going to take a lot of focus and energy to be able to provide the overall context, and then also to make sure that the AI has the requirements or the specifications, the guidance it needs to be able to execute correctly in that very large code base. So this is where you want to absolutely focus on the most critical parts of your software and make sure that you're keeping things as lean and as efficient as possible in that code. That is going to really go a long ways to making sure the AI can work better with large code bases.
Well, that's definitely a main point we've heard from our partners too. Right now, a lot of AI adoption happens at the individual level, but AI needs to become a collaborative tool that benefits entire team. How can AI be integrated into development workflows so teams, not just individual engineers, can benefit? And what are the best strategies for making AI a shared resource across a development team?
Yes, so this is going to be a whole new challenge for enterprise teams. There was a recent study that I thought was really interesting that showed a single developer using AI can be nearly as efficient as an entire team using AI. This was just for coding, but it gives you a sense of, if done right, what exactly you can do to make AI work, both with individual contributors and then also in a team setting. In the team setting, I think what's really key is understanding that it's more than just coding, that you need to make sure that you are using it as a team-wide tool and you're basically approaching it like a shared resource or asset. You want to make sure that AI is on your team and that it's going to be able to pitch in as you're doing planning, you're doing coding, and also deployment like production readiness. There's another important part, which is kind of like team governance around AI. You want to make sure everyone's on the same page about how you're going to use it. So that's perhaps the most important thing, is the coordination and planning around its use across your entire team. So what I would say is basically bring in AI at every step, every phase. Make sure that you're using it from the very beginning, that you're getting good product requirement documents, you're getting good technical specifications, you're able to have exactly what you need to deliver the code that's needed, and to then make sure that that code is of sufficiently high quality and ready for production. So this is something that's going to require your team to learn how to do this, to coordinate together, and to bring AI on board as a partner and all that.
Really appreciate you walking us through that. Even when AI generates impressive results, how do we know it's correct, secure, and high quality? What are the biggest risks with AI generated output, and how do we value and validate AI driven decisions? How can companies build AI specific QA processes to ensure reliability?
You absolutely need to do this. Yeah, there's so much focus just on the coding part right now, but QA is what's going to make sure that whatever is developed actually is the right solution, that it's going to meet all of the requirements, that it's going to tick all the boxes, and you get what you need for your project. So just bear in mind, AI is not a magic bullet. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't do everything perfectly or beautifully. And so that means that you have got to be the safety net that brings it back into alignment as you're trying to develop this and bring it to production. So I would say that the most important things to do are to, first of all, have a culture of quality within your team. If you're just going to let AI build stuff and that's what you're going to release, that's going to cause big, big problems. So first step is to have a culture of quality within your team. Next, make sure that you set the right goals for both development and that quality. This is going to be a really important feedback loop. So you want to make sure what it is it's going to look like when you first deliver something to QA, and then what it's going to look like for QA to basically have a feedback loop with development so that you know that you're going to iteratively move towards the final outcome that you need. So that's going to require you then to fix it up. You're going to want to continue using AI to do that. And then you want to continue that feedback loop, ultimately arriving at the exact right quality for your product. Again, I can't emphasize enough that people have to be in the loop here. This is absolutely critical. AI is going to do amazing work, but you have to have people in the mix in order to achieve these quality outcomes.
Edward, this has been an absolute masterclass. Thank you. If there is one key takeaway you'd like companies and engineers to remember about making AI work at scale, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say that AI needs your help. It needs good data. It needs you for you to work with it to understand the scope of work it's going to be doing, the requirement documents, the specifications. You need to have good planning around the work you're going to do with AI. And most importantly, you have to have really good oversight and collaboration to make big projects work. Now, this means that it's really up to the people who are doing this work to make that